All right, so today we're talking about supplementary, complementary, and vertical angles. Supplementary angles, to start with, are always going to add up to 180 degrees. So when you're looking at a linear pair, which is what we have here, what we have here are two angles that add up to 180. They happen to be on the same line, which makes them, in particular, a linear pair. So it's one of those situations where all linear pairs are supplementary, but not all supplementary angles are linear pairs. So you may have two angles that add up to 180, but aren't on the same line. They aren't adjacent. That's another piece of vocabulary we want to talk about. If I'm looking at angle CDA, so this angle right here, and angle ADB, this angle right here, these two are adjacent angles because they're right next to each other. They share that same ray, that DA. So that's important to know as well. So yeah, that's kind of what you need to know about supplementary angles. Complementary angles, similarly, add up to 90 degrees. So, write that down. Not a whole lot more there. Angle MLN is complementary to NLO. And then vertical angles are formed whenever two lines cross, and vertical angles are the ones that are kind of opposite of each other. They share a vertex, but not any rays. So angle ZXY is a vertical angle with WXU, and that means that these two angles are congruent. Let's try that again. Hang on. That also kind of introduces, we've talked a little bit about it before, but this little marking here tells me that these two angles are congruent. If I have these two angles, I want to differentiate them in another way. I'm going to do it in a different color because that looks a little bit confusing. But if I want to say ZXY is congruent to WXU, that's putting those two, just one little swipe on each one. That shows that those two angles are congruent. This doesn't have to be in a different color. I'm doing it in a different color right now. But if I want to put a different pair and say those two angles are congruent, so in this case, ZXW and YXU, I want to say those two are congruent. I'm going to use two lines instead of just one. And you can do three, you can do more if you've got multiple sets of congruent angles in the same figure. So anyway, vertical angles formed by two lines crossing, they're directly to each other, across from each other, and they are congruent. So that's pretty much it for the introduction to these types of angles. Hope that helps.